The archive knows no limits. Everything you know is a lie. Whatever you do, trust nothing. When I first read this message, I didn't understand what any of that meant. But to explain how I even found this thing, we have to go back just a few nights earlier. So there I was, chilling, scrolling through some old Discord messages when I came across a few messages from an old friend of mine that I never bothered to open. But when I did, he told me this.
Yo bro, I found this Minecraft world that somebody sent me a while back. They said it was a social experiment world to see if people would build stuff or just grieve everything. It looks chill, but there are some weird files in here for some reason. But you should check it out though.
He then proceeded to send me a Google Drive link, which I'm guessing contained the world file itself. At the time, it didn't really seem that weird. The only thing that caught my attention was the fact that he specifically mentioned that there were some other files in the folder as well. But looking at the link itself, it didn't really seem like one of those faked hacked URLs people use to steal your Discord account or infect your PC. But still, something about it felt off. But nonetheless, I clicked anyway. And when I did, my suspicions were correct. There were multiple files, just as my friend had said, one of them obviously being the world download itself, but the rest of the files had seemingly nothing to do with the world at all. There were text files, an audio file, an image file, and even some old video footage. At the time, I assumed that these files were intentionally placed as some sort of joke to troll people or to make this whole thing seem creepier than it actually was. But looking back at these files, it should have been a red flag for me to keep going, but I had trusted my friend since I've known him for a few years now, and it just wouldn't seem like the type of thing that he would do. So instead of downloading the other files, I just downloaded the main world file itself, loaded up Minecraft, and joined the world. But when I finally loaded in, I expected tons of old builds, some loot, or even a spawn, since my friend mentioned that it was some kind of SMP world. But nonetheless, I gathered some wood, crafted some basic tools, and I went on to start exploring the world itself. But as I was wandering around, I remembered why I even joined this world in the first place. My friend told me this was supposed to be some kind of social experiment, to test whether people would build, come together, or just wreak havoc and destroy the server. Since I was in a plains biome, I knew that it would only be a matter of time until I find some sort of player activity, and as I said that, I eventually spotted something in the distance. At first, I honestly thought it was some random survival base, but considering I'd spent the last few minutes finding absolutely nothing, the fact that there was a structure here at all was enough to catch my attention. At first, the house itself didn't really seem that unusual. I mean, everything inside looked pretty normal. There was a bed, a furnace, a crafting table, and an empty chest. Honestly, it looked exactly like the kind of starter base somebody would build during their first few days in a survival world. But the more I thought about it, the weirder it became. The doors were already open, the chest was completely empty, and there wasn't really any sign that whoever lived there would ever come back. On the right side of the house was a staircase, possibly leading down into a mine. It was lit up with torches, and it looked like somebody had spent time digging it out. But behind it was a small cow pen with a few cows still inside, which only made me wonder what happened to the person who built this place. But it didn't really lead anywhere, at least not from what I could tell. And for some reason, that bothered me more than the empty house did, because it felt unfinished, like somebody had started something and never got the chance to finish it. At the time, I figured whoever built the house probably just quit playing, and honestly, that would have been the most reasonable explanation. I closed the doors behind me and kept exploring. I still thought I was looking at the remains of some kind of social experiment. I still had no idea what I was actually about to find. After leaving the house, I kept exploring the area for a little while, and not too far away, I found another build. It wasn't really much of a structure, but more like an outdoor living space. There were stairs arranged to look like a couch, a fence with carpet on top to make it look like a table. And that's when I noticed something. The carpet matched the exact same color of the one inside the house. At first, I thought maybe this was built by a different player, but the more I looked at it, the more it felt connected. The house itself wasn't very big, so my guess was that whoever lived there just didn't have enough room inside and decided to build part of it outside instead. But honestly, none of that really seemed important to me. It was just another sign that somebody had definitely been here before. But then, I remember seeing a dirt bridge behind the house near the river, so I went back to check it out. But once I crossed it, there wasn't really anything there. No buildings, no ruins, no signs, nothing. Just more trees in a dense forest. And since I was planning on exploring further anyway, I decided to upgrade my tools first. So I grabbed some stone, crafted a stone pickaxe, made a stone sword, and got ready to keep searching. But that's when I noticed something. At the corner of my eye was a block. But not just a normal block. It was a mossy cobblestone block, just sitting there by itself. And I know blocks like that don't naturally generate in the open. So immediately, my first thought was somebody had definitely placed this here. But anyways, I walked over to it and mined it anyway. And underneath was a staircase. Okay, that's definitely not normal. So I headed down. At the bottom, there was water. And at first, I thought the tunnel just ended there. But when I looked to my left, the path was blocked off. But when I looked to my right, there was another path leading to a tunnel. So naturally, I followed it. And eventually, it opened into what it looked like an abandoned strip mine. There were 3 tunnels branching off of it, so I checked the furthest one first. After mining a few blocks, there was nothing. So I went to the second one. The second one wasn't much different, just a bunch of stone and nothing interesting. But when I mined the first block of the first tunnel, something had changed. Behind the stone was another passage, but this one looked completely different. The walls weren't natural anymore, and they were made from stone bricks, some of them even having patterns carved into them, while others just being normal blocks. I was definitely no longer looking at an abandoned mine, because at the bottom was a tunnel. A really long tunnel. For the first time since joining the world, I stopped. I don't know why, but standing there felt different. Maybe it was the tunnel, maybe it was how deep underground I was, or maybe it was the fact that none of this should be here in the first place. But after a few seconds, I kept going. I dug further than I had in any of the other tunnels, but eventually, I found something. It was some sort of library. The room was massive. It was filled with bookshelves, broken pathways, water flooding the floor, and it looked completely destroyed. There were cobwebs everywhere, and the weirdest part was that there was no way this could have been built in survival normally. At that point, I genuinely started getting uncomfortable. The deeper I went, the more flooded everything became, and eventually, I had reached the very bottom. It looked almost like an underground ocean, but in the middle of it were these pedestals. After checking the other pedestals on the outer islands, I slowly walked back to the first section where there were multiple pedestals and realized that I didn't check one. And when I did, it told me this.
Welcome, traveler. Reconstruction has already begun. The everlasting information of this world cannot and will not be erased. Every step, every voice, every build, every life shall be remain. The archive does not create, it recalls, and in time, so will you.
At that point, I didn't really know what to think. The weather had changed, and whatever I saw out there wasn't supposed to be there. I kept trying to convince myself that there was some logical explanation for this. Maybe it was part of the world, maybe I missed something, or maybe I was just overthinking everything. But no matter how many excuses I came up with, none of them really explained what I had just seen. So the first thing I did was go back to Discord, because if anyone knew what was going on, it would have been the guy who sent me the world. Dude, where did you even get this world from? What the frick? What is this archive? Hello? Answer me, bro. What is going on? At first, I thought he was actually about to answer. It showed that he was typing, but then it stopped. I sat there waiting and waiting until something happened. His name had been changed. His profile picture seemed to be deleted. And before I could even process what I was looking at, his account was gone. Yeah, at that point, I was freaking out because this wasn't some social experiment anymore. This wasn't some abandoned survivor world or whatever this was. And whatever that thing that I just saw in the distance, it was real. I mean, seriously, what even was that room? There's no way that could have been built naturally. Why was it underground? Why did everything seem different when I came back up? The more I thought about it, the less any of it made sense. But then I remembered something. The files. All those weird files sitting in the folder. Maybe whatever I had just seen was connected to them. So I went back. And this time, I actually started reading.
Project Recovery. The purpose of this world is to observe long-term player interaction inside a shared survival environment. Participants are encouraged to build freely, leave structures intact, and document environmental changes over time. Automatic backups occur every 12 hours. Please report any unusual terrain behavior to archive moderators.
The world was exactly what my friend originally described. A long-term social experiment where players were supposed to build, document changes, and leave the world intact for future players. At least, that was the official explanation. But then I opened the notes file.
I don't think the world is updating normally anymore. Some of the underground structures weren't there before. The tunnels keep changing after reloads, and I found partial versions of builds I know I never made. There's also footsteps on the ground sometimes, but they stop whenever I stop moving.
And that's when things got weird. Underground structures appearing that weren't there before, tunnels changing after reloads, partial versions of builds, footsteps underground. Okay, so it wasn't just me. Someone else had noticed the exact same things, and judging by the way it was written, they sounded genuinely concerned. But anyways, I opened the next file.
Archival status report. Environmental reconstruction incomplete. Behavior replication active. Memory integrity unstable. Continued exposure increases reconstruction accuracy. Do not interrupt active reconstruction cycles.
The next file was called archive log, and honestly, I wish I never opened it. Environmental reconstruction complete, behavior replication active, memory integrity unstable, continued exposure increases reconstruction accuracy. What does that even mean? Reconstruction of what? Behavior replication? Memory integrity? The more I read, the less it sounded like a Minecraft world. But anyways, I opened the next file. But this file just contained some coordinates, and the last set of coordinates were incomplete. But at the bottom was a list of subjects recovered. M_Turner, archive_return, and incomplete. When I read the names, it didn't really ring a bell. But recovered from what exactly? Because at this point, that word kept appearing everywhere. And then I found another log.
Subject active. Behavioral consistency improving. Memory gaps detected. Environmental reconstruction incomplete. Continue archival process.
I genuinely had no idea what I was reading anymore. It felt less like a documentation and more like somebody monitoring something. The next file was just a dark image. At first I thought it was just corrupted, so I closed it. I didn't even bother looking further. But then I opened the audio file. At first, it just sounded like static and water, but after listening for a few seconds, I recognized something. The tunnel. The same sounds I heard standing in front of that long tunnel. The same low hum, the same water, and somehow that made everything worse. Because now I knew I actually heard something down there. It wasn't my imagination. And then I opened the last file. After watching that disturbing footage, I really ended up with more questions than answers, if anything. I still didn't know what the archive was, I still didn't know who built it, and I still had no idea what happened to the investigator in that recording. But the weirdest part wasn't any of that. It was the fact that somehow, despite finding completely different things, we both ended up in this
Reconstruction incomplete.